Good morning. It is Thursday, November 19th, and welcome to the Sociality Squared Director's Cut, where we go over content that we create here at Sociality Squared and general social media trends and social media marketing best practices and tips. Today, we're talking about our November newsletter that just came out yesterday and its theme of gratitude, so stay tuned. And thank you for joining. I know we're still in the middle of a pandemic and a lot is happening. So thank you for choosing to spend 30 minutes with me here today. And I also just want to acknowledge that we're nearing almost 250,000 people who have passed due to the coronavirus. So as we head into Thanksgiving, I know many families are going to be grieving about their loved ones lost this year. Whether from the coronavirus or otherwise. So I just want to say my heart is with your heart. And my heart is especially with the Black community right now. Here at Sociality Squared, we don't want business to return back to normal. We want a new standard rooted in anti-racism and radical inclusion and equality. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Helen, the co-founder and CEO of Sociality Squared. And if you're new to Sociality Squared, we're a social media agency who understands the magic of people coming together around what they value and love, and clients partner with us to grow their businesses and know that we always remember behind every screen is a person. So in the comments or in the description of this video, there's all the links of how you can connect with us and me as well. I'm Helen's Travels on Instagram and Twitter. So to begin, we have a little bit of Sociality Squared news. The biggest thing is South by Southwest 2021 panel submissions and sessions are being voted on right now by the public. We have one submitted, which I would greatly appreciate your vote. It just takes a second to create an account, log in, and tap or click that thumbs up. I'm really excited about the topic this year that we're submitting. It's on Facebook Empower and the need for more regulation. We've got a great lineup of speakers on this panel. It's yours truly, Vigilanza Abazi, who is just like a rock star, a professor, I should say Dr. Abazi. She actually helped write UN law on whistleblower protection, and data privacy is another one of her specialties. We also have David Kirkpatrick, who I've always been a big fan of. He actually wrote the book on Facebook called The Facebook Effect. And then Salah Zalatimo, who's the CEO of Voice. And Voice is interesting. It's a new social media platform built on the blockchain. And their premise is, if we built social media from scratch, what would it look like? Taking all the best practices from what we've learned and kind of cutting what we don't want. So we're really hoping that this gets selected to be able to dive into this at South by Southwest 2021, which will all be virtual. So thank you in advance to everyone who has already voted, and for anyone who watches this and votes. Thank you. Another thing, I mentioned this last week. A friend of mine, Jackie, just launched a new company called the Dream Academy, which kind of gives people the tools to bring their dreams alive, specifically entrepreneurial dreams. So in the description, there's a code where you can receive a free class and also a percentage off on some of her courses. So it's been a dream of hers for a long time, so I'm super excited for her. Congrats, Jackie. And for anyone thinking about an entrepreneurial endeavor, definitely check out the Dream Academy. And then this season of the Director's Cut is coming to a close. Next week will actually be the last one for the season. It's Thanksgiving Day, and the company is closed, but I wanted to do a special Thanksgiving broadcast. I recently moved from New York to Cincinnati, and usually for Thanksgiving, I've always been in New York City and never traveled because I took a lot of time off to travel over the Christmas and New Year's holiday. So oftentimes I was with an aunt and uncle in New York or with friends celebrating Thanksgiving. So I know what it's like to to not be with your immediate family or extended family for a big Thanksgiving dinner. But also I know this year is going to be really different for everyone, of either having smaller dinners or isolating because of COVID, not able to travel. So I'm opening up the Facebook Live to anyone who wants to spend the morning, Thanksgiving morning, will have company. So it will just be a light broadcast to celebrate Thanksgiving and as a season finale for the director's cut. And then, of course, if you haven't already, please do like this page and you'll get notified when I get up and go live. And then also sign up for our newsletter, because once the season ends, the newsletter is the best way to stay up to date on all things Sociality Squared and the trends that we flagged as important. Okay, so the topic. So the newsletter. Our monthly newsletter came out yesterday, and I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things in it. The first one, I actually had to Google, like, when does winter actually begin? And it's December 1st, although here in Cincinnati, it's already really chilly. And all the leaves have kind of fallen off the trees that had a beautiful color change over the fall. But one thing that's kind of interesting, as we're reminded of the change of seasons, from the scenery outside and the colder weather, and it gets dark so early now, is that social media really doesn't have seasons. It's a 365 day a year endeavor where we're constantly tasked with engaging our communities and having year-round conversations. And depending on the type of client or the brand, it varies. Like e-commerce around the shopping holidays on Thanksgiving is very different than, say, a B2B brand that shuts down over the holidays, on what type of content and the frequency. And I would also normally say that despite social media's demands, we take offline time very serious at Sociality Squared for work-life balance and mental health. And usually around the holidays, I encourage everyone to unplug, but this year's is different because of COVID, and we're using social media to stay connected with one another. We'll be Zooming and FaceTiming to see friends and family. With the seasons changing, it's also a reminder of all the little things to be grateful for, and actually being able to be connected digitally this year is one of those. I guess I should put a little asterisk, is just do it responsibly, and if for some reason scrolling isn't bringing you happiness because you're feeling FOMO because maybe you aren't exactly where you want to be for Thanksgiving, whether that's with friends or family, then definitely take a pause, because mental health is the best, and find what will bring you joy this Thanksgiving, whether that's curling up with your favorite book or movie. But I would say with everything with 2020, this year gets an asterisk of how things are working. I also mentioned in the newsletter that it is Trans Awareness Week, so we are joining in on celebrating our transgender friends and readers. And in the newsletter, there's also a link to the GLAAD website, which has more information bringing the awareness and education about trans issues. And one of the things, there's a statistic out there that very few Americans actually know someone who is transgender in their lives. And it's a lot easier to, dehumanize people if we don't actually know someone. And oftentimes we look to those portrayed in media as our reference points of who, or like, what does it mean to be transgender? So like really taking the time to educate yourself, and also just realize people are people, everyone's human, it goes a long ways. But one series that I really recommend is Sense8. think I mentioned it in a earlier broadcast, but I don't know if it's the producer or writer or director, what her title is, but Lana Wachowski is involved in it, and she's fabulous. She's a very, I guess, known transgender woman who's all of her work is amazing, from the Matrix series with her sister Lily Wachowski, Speed Racer. Like, I recommend all their work. But one thing I specifically like about Sense8 is one of the lead characters is a transgender woman, and she's in a loving, joyful relationship, and we definitely need to see more of those represented in society. And then also, the other thing about addressing transgender issues is like the most marginalized person is the Black transgender woman. And if you address all of the issues, because the Black transgendered woman is like compounded all of the issues, if you lift her up, you lift up everyone, because she gets all of the issues, which is so by helping our most marginalized, you really address and lift up everyone and all of the issues that are compounded to the most marginalized. So happy Trans Awareness Week. If you didn't know it was a Trans Awareness Week, I encourage you to click or Google what it means and just spend a few minutes to participate, in the very least of just educating yourself a little bit more. Let's see, I mentioned South by Southwest. Another thing that's in the newsletter is Giving Tuesday, which is coming up. I'm a really big fan of some of the holidays around, like the holidays around Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays in general, because it's about people coming together around food and camaraderie and just gratitude around a dinner table. Like, that's one of the best things in life. And then you have, the Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which is very commercial driven. But then you have Small Business Saturday, which I'm a huge fan of. My parents come from small businesses where it's support your local independent shops. So please, as you're thinking about taking advantage of good deals over the shopping holidays, consider supporting your local independent businesses, especially this year. Everyone's been hit particularly hard because of COVID. So I think this year Small Business Saturday has extra meaning to really support our local businesses and communities. And of course, if you want to buy handmade marbled scarves, I'll give a shout out to my mom at the Cliff Dwellers Gallery in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. You can give her a call and make an order. And then you have Tuesday, which is Giving Tuesday, and I don't know when it began, but if you're not familiar with it, it's literally a day dedicated to giving and supporting causes and nonprofit organizations. We're a really big fan of this, especially with our clients who have a cause, a foundation, a philanthropy fund that they need extra support for, because it's a great way where people are kind of primed, the community is primed to be ready to give around Giving Tuesday. And one of our clients is a nonprofit, the Leica Society. We've been working with them for about 4 years now. And over that time, we're almost doubled their paid membership, which is really great we're very proud of that, and to work with them as a client. And for Giving Tuesday, one of the things that we do from a marketing standpoint is use it to help get members to renew, and also take a percentage of their membership dues to support their philanthropy fund, which goes into supporting a grant for a photographer every year. And the Giving Tuesday funds really do help with the grant and their ability to award an emerging photographer to continue their project. The gal, actually, let me pull it up. The gal who won the 2020 project Her name is Anna, and she did this, or she's working on, I should say, she started this amazing project in, what is it, El Salvador? El Salvador and Venezuela, where she photographed women's prisons, or women's life in prisons, and just, you know, how bad it is to raise awareness. The detention center should be a short amount of time, and some of these women spend years there. The conditions are horrible, and Anna really sees her camera and visual storytelling as also a social justice tool. So super deserving photographer, really wonderful project. So Giving Tuesday through the Leica Society literally gets to help photographers like this, Anna this year and someone next year. So if you're interested, you can become a member of the Leica Society, or you can just donate to the fund, and the link is in there. And then you can find out more information about Anna and the previous grant winners. But anyone, who uses their art and craft for social justice, I'm always a big fan of. And then in general, if photography isn't your jam and there's another organization you want to support or usually support, check out if they're doing anything special for Giving Tuesday. Often, sometimes your giving means more. Like with the Leica Society, there's a donor who's going to match the donations. So by even contributing to some of your organizations on Giving Tuesday, your matches will actually make a bigger difference because of the donor matching. And then, if you're a social media marketer, I would say it's probably a little too late to throw something together. But things can happen fast for Giving Tuesday. But it's definitely a holiday that if we can do something for our clients, that we always try to, because not only do we believe in just supporting good causes, it actually is a tool to also help achieve their goals, peripheral to what the cause is too. And then for the articles we're reading, there's a couple, or just like news in general, we put a couple oldies but goodies in the newsletter, or some that I've been meaning to share for a while. Like, for example, the first one, there's a really good interview with Jack Dorsey, who's the CEO of Twitter, from 2016. This Tuesday, him and Mark Zuckerberg had a hearing to talk about their moderation and misinformation around the 2020 election. But this interview from 4 years ago is still pretty relevant, because Jack Dorsey is essentially, I haven't heard too many interviews with him, but it was a really good one, where he was very candid and open about Twitter's mistakes, social media industry, how the algorithms shouldn't be such a black box, which was really great to hear from a prominent social media platform CEO. There's been talk of that in the industry, but I don't think I hadn't heard that directly coming from a CEO of like an industry-wide issue. So that was really good to hear. And just like some of the thought processes that go into how Twitter operates. So it's really good. I recommend it, especially for the social media nerds out there who are following this closer. And then yesterday, the hearing, we have a link in there from some of the New York Times takeaways. To be honest, there was nothing that new. It was just like more of the same that we've heard in previous hearings. I think the one thing that was kind of a nice takeaway is that both Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey agreed that the policy, or the moderation policies, could use reform, and that they're open to that, because they have their policies, they each have their own policies, and they don't necessarily apply them equally or clearly. So that was good to read, that they're open to the reform, but we'll see what that actually means. Not holding my breath, but am in favor of it as well. A few other articles. This is a little bit older one too, but the online radicalization that we're not talking about. This really talks about how the alt-right white nationalists, very similar to ISIS, use media and social media to manipulate it to amplify their narrative and recruitment. I think it's just as important now as when the article first came out. So I encourage people to read that. I mentioned this in a previous newsletter about how to avoid inspiration porn. So this is kind of a follow-up. And if you didn't watch that episode or this term is new to you, I'll explain it really quickly. We're very inclusive here at Sociality Squared. And I know a lot of organizations and people are too, and have really good intentions. And often inspiration porn comes out of good intention, but bad execution. So it's when you show a disabled person, and instead of actually speaking to the disabled person, it comes from a place to make non-disabled people feel better about themselves, and then more or less objectifying the disabled person. So maybe it's a photo of a disabled person, running track that has maybe an amputee running track. And it's like, well, if this person can do this, you should feel better about your life, type of quote. That is inspiration porn. So it's really meant not for the disabled community, but to make the non-disabled community feel better. So it's a really good article that kind of outlines and explains this more and ways to avoid it. Because I think the intentions behind most of these things are probably good. It's just, lack of awareness and just being a little bit more thoughtful about when it comes to including people, how are we doing it? It should be to the benefit of those people and not to use them for the benefit of the majority. So really good article on that front. A few new... Oh, one more thing on the Trump front. So a few interesting things in terms of Trump and the social media platforms. So I don't know what date this happened, but at some point in time, Facebook and Twitter, I'm pretty sure YouTube too, but I can't say to that, had this rule, and this was before this year, that celebrities and public figures get this exemption of following the terms of service, which I've kind of ranted about online before, in terms of, they've made an exception that Trump can more or less bully people. Actually, it might have been 2016 where they came out with their stance on this. But because he's running for office or celebrity or, public official, that he doesn't, the terms of service doesn't apply to him. And to be honest, this has opened up a whole floodgate of issues, and a lot of the election integrity leading up to the 2020 election. The articles now are saying, well, what happens to Trump come January 20th when he's no longer president? Do these rules still apply? And the platforms are saying no, or at least Twitter is. I don't know Facebook's stance offhand. So my bet is come January 20th or 21st, Trump is going to get kicked off Twitter for violating the terms of service. So that's something interesting to watch. He might lose his favorite social media platform and beacon to publish a lot of his news. So definitely we'll be looking both to Facebook and Twitter and what Trump tweets around those dates. And it will be interesting also to see if they retroactively apply, which I doubt, that he's violated it so many times that he should just get kicked off. But more than likely, I would assume that they're going to wait until he screws up again maybe issue a warning or just kick them off right away. But definitely something to look to. I doubt he's going to behave. A few new product updates have rolled out. We have Instagram is testing out fan badges for their live videos. This is something that a few creators have, and another way to raise money for the creators. I haven't seen it or tested it yet, but I'm a fan of new tools to help creators who produce all this content help get paid and rewarded for their time and talent. Also, Twitter joins the stories product. So Snapchat created this format, then we saw Instagram adopt it. LinkedIn actually adopted it. You can do stories. Google or YouTube have some form of it. I think actually even Google search has some form, but I haven't seen it pop up in a long time. But the latest to join the fray is Twitter. They introduced these on Tuesday, sometime earlier this week, and they are called fleets. So I've already seen a bunch of people adopt it. Among the social media community, it's like, okay, great, now we're producing optimized content for one more channel, so it's a lot. But I think the main takeaway, if you're not a social media community manager and you're a brand and or maybe starting your social media presence and wondering what to do, stories are ever important. People are spending more time on them. The fact that all the platforms have now really adopted them is you should be incorporating stories into your content strategy. And if you need help, feel free to reach out. Okay, so we're coming up to the half hour. So the inspiration section, I started listening to Michelle Obama's podcast. So it will be one of my winter podcasts, listening to listen to the entire season. One thing that I really appreciated about the first episode is where the whole series is centered around relationships that we have with important people in our lives and having conversations and hard conversations with those people, which I love the premise of that, like right out the gate. In the first episode, she interviews her husband, Barack Obama. And one of the things that they talk about is how they were raised, how it was different, and where the similarities were. But the main takeaway for me is how much of the values of them being raised were centered around the children, and how the whole neighborhood raised the kids. Specifically, Michelle talked about growing up in Chicago, and how the whole neighborhood kind of raised the kids in the neighborhood. And they also talked about values and American values of kind of where we're at today, of independence, where you move away from home, that's independent of success, you raise your family, you think you can do it all on your own, and then the pressure of all of that, of not being in a neighborhood where everyone on the block is helping raise your kids and helping take off some of that pressure, is kind of showing itself, and where self-reliance sometimes works against community values. So I found it, I actually want to re-listen to it, but I found it really thought-provoking in terms of how do we think about values. Should we re-look at some of our values? 2020 is making a lot of us re-evaluate a lot of things. I've moved closer to family in this moment in time. I've had other friends do the same or consider doing the same. In a lot of ways, whether it's being close to family or whatever it is, we've all kind of reflected on what's important to us this year. And in the larger context, what does community mean? Here at Sociality Squared, we often think so much of community in terms of the online communities we build and brand communities and how those are reinforced online and shared, shared values and shared interests. But, as social media marketers, it's usually through the lens of brands, for better or for worse. Not to, what do I want to say? There is value in people coming together around shared interests, even if they are around brands, because that means a lot to a lot of people. This episode kind of got me thinking about how does self-reliance and that American value fit in with community, and where does community values just fit in to the American ethos? I mentioned on a recent episode on social trust how we have lower social trust in the United States, where we just don't trust our neighbors. In general, civic engagement of parents being part of PTAs, Rotary clubs, bowling leagues has gone down. And I don't think the two things are, from this podcast and the Freakonomics about social trust, are unrelated either. So that's something I'm thinking about and will continue to think about and probably write some content about community in the broader context of our country values and how that what that means to me, to Sociality Squared, and just in general. So I really recommend that podcast. It got me thinking as I'm kind of spitballing here, but really good, and I'm excited to listen to all of it. And we're coming up to, or we're a little over the half hour. So if you do unplug on Thanksgiving, which I encourage you to do, especially to our US fans, have a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving next week. If you would like some company in the morning, I will be here to celebrate Thanksgiving. And the theme of the newsletter is gratitude and just appreciating the small things in life. Whether it's seeing the change of seasons, or this morning I'm very grateful for you for spending time, and for all of our newsletter readers, community that follow along, are part of our journey, for our clients and partners who allow us to do what we love to do every day here at Sociality Squared. And of course, I'm very grateful to the Sociality Squared team, who is really the glue behind Sociality Squared that brings everything alive. So thank you for joining. Have a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving next week. And if you'd like some Thanksgiving morning company, I will see you then. Okay. Take care.